My name is Gretchen Bialfus-Witt, and I'm the supervisor for the History Room, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Edith M. Clark History Room of the Rowan Public Library. The History Room is located on the third floor of the headquarters branch of the Rowan Public Library at 201 West Fisher Street in Salisbury, North Carolina. While not currently open to the public, the History Room staff is available to assist patrons by email or phone. Today, I'd like to share with you our rare book room and some of its treasures. The Craig family has a long association with the library. Mrs. Burton Craig, Jane Boyden Craig, was the daughter of A. H. Boyden, who had been mayor of Salisbury. Mrs. Craig gave the library the land on which it now sits in order to build a library for the community. Burton Craig and their son Archibald were avid collectors of historical materials pertaining to North Carolina, and in the late 1990s, the Craigs gave their collection of North Caroliniana to the library. One of the stipulations of the gift was to provide a rare book room for the collection, which you see here. Vicky Rufty, a local woodworker and a staff member of the Rowan Public Library, built these bookcases. Along with the Craig collection, other items of a rare or fragile nature are also housed here. Some of these materials are duplicated in the History Room collection and can be used for research. Most of the rare book materials can be accessed by requesting an appointment with the History Room librarian. One of the items housed in the rare book room is the Yadkin Hotel registry for 1920. Among the guests of the Yadkin Hotel were some permanent residents, including members of the Sparks Circus, which wintered here in Salisbury in the early 19-teens. The registry appears to be bound backwards, with January 1st, 1920, the last page, and December 31st, 1920, the first page. The hotel added the registration page at the beginning of each day, with the new day's page on top. You can see people came from all over. Here we have registrants from St. Louis, Chicago, and Philadelphia, all in the same day. This page shows a ball club from Detroit. In 2012, at the centennial celebration of the Yadkin Hotel, now the Yadkin House, this registry was on display for the guests to see. Oscar D. Morehouse, a Union prisoner at the Salisbury Confederate Prison, wrote a diary in 1864, which is part of the collection in the rare book room. The diary itself is too fragile to be examined. However, the material has been duplicated and can be used by any researcher. Among other items currently kept in the rare book room are copies of almost all of the novels written by Frances Fisher Tiernan, aka Christian Reed. Here is a copy of her book, The Land of the Sky, giving Western North Carolina its famous nickname. Rowan Public Library also has original documents, some dating back to the 1700s or early 1800s. These letters shown here, part of the Murphy Clement collection, are requests to join the oldest Mason Lodge in Salisbury, the Old Cone Lodge. As you can see, this one, in 1802, is the request of John Fulton, the gentleman for whom Fulton Street is named. These other documents, part of the same collection, are orders for the sheriff to bring specific people into court. One of my favorite stories about an item in the rare book room is about the Mount Vernon Ledger. Early in our history, post offices were scattered all over the country, many in people's homes. These postal history books show us the location of early post offices, when they existed, who was the postmaster or mistress, when they discontinued service, etc. Mount Vernon, an old plantation house, is one such place. Mount Vernon also had a store on the grounds. People could come by the store, pick up what they needed on credit, and their purchases were recorded in a ledger. By reading this ledger, we can see what items people purchased: tobacco, sugar, calico cloth, pins, and other household items, and which families were in the neighborhood. This ledger records the purchases made in 1855 to 57. One day, a man came into the history room with this ledger. He was a truck driver and frequently passed through North Carolina on his way back and forth, but was familiar with Rowan and its early history. He was in another state, I believe Virginia, and stopped at a yard sale. Seeing this old ledger and realizing what it was, he purchased it and brought it by the history room the next time he came through Salisbury. It was such a lucky find and wonderful of him to bring it back to Rowan and help us preserve this bit of our history. Another stipulation of acquiring the Cray collection was to display these beautiful tomes you see here in the cases outside the history room. Mark Catsby, an English naturalist, first came to the colonies in 1712, accompanying his sister Elizabeth, who had married Dr. William Cocke, Secretary of State of the colony of Virginia. Catsby traveled extensively in the back country of what became North and South Carolina, as well as in Florida and the Bahamas, studying the native flora and fauna. He was one of the first naturalists to draw from life rather than from specimens long dead that had been brought back by sailors. He went back to England, etched these images, which were then printed and hand-colored. During this time, books were not bound as they are today. Parts of the books were sold by subscription in folios, maybe 20 pages at a time, to subscribers. Once the subscriber had collected all, or whatever part of the material they wanted, they would take the material to a bookbinder, who would then bind it. Consequently, Mark Catsby's The Natural History of Carolina, Florida, and the Bahama Islands, when bound, could consist of 2, 3, or even 4 volumes. We have a set of 2, one volume containing primarily birds, and the other fish and reptiles. These books were published in 1747 initially, with a second printing in 1753. Most of the pages in these volumes were printed in 1753, with a few pages coming from the earlier printing. We periodically turn the pages of the books so the visitors to the library can see these lovely images up close. Thank you for joining me today, and check back for more information about the Edith M. Clark History Room.